1 week alone, a road trip on my bike. I'm in a good mood and ready for new experiences. In 7 days, I have to cross 6 countries and travel 2,600 kilometers. It was only a few days earlier that I had decided to take the trip, so there wasn't much organization or planning involved. My starting point was Athens, and I had to reach Ohrid FYROM for my first night stop, a distance of 650 kilometers. So I jumped on the Athens-Lamia highway. I took the exit before Lamia, taking the provincial road to Kardica. I continued on to Trikala. I passed Kalabaka and the unique rock formations of Meteora. I then got on the Ignatia highway near Grevena and headed toward Kozani. Before Kozani, I took the left toward Ptonomaida. I continued to Amideo, Florina, and eventually to the FYROM border. The distance from the border to Ohrid is about 100 kilometers, a route with plenty of flora that passes through a few towns. Ohrid is a low-budget city that I absolutely recommend as a destination if you are ever in the area. It's filled with nice small paths and boasts an impressive castle with a breathtaking panoramic view. A nice walking route and a short and easy distance is the Church of St. John Caneo, which stands on a small hill in the northern part of the city. At the Port Road, you can find cafeterias and restaurants, and the ambience of the area makes you feel like you're on an island. When I reached Ohrid, I parked at the square right in front of the lake. It was there where Dimitri approached me and offered me a house to stay at for 20 euros per night, a good offer which I accepted. The next morning, I did a little sightseeing and then hit the road at about 12 p.m. I planned on staying overnight in Kotor, Montenegro, so I had to cross the mountains of central Albania to reach the northwest border. I drove towards the north side of the lake to enter Albania from its eastern border. The truth is that I was scared of the idea of crossing this country alone, after reading a few posts in travel forums and hearing some odd stories from some of my friends that had visited Albania in the past. They had told me to keep small bills on me in case I needed to bribe the police if they stopped me. I think that's enough to get nervous about right there. Fortunately, at the border checkpoint, I met a large group of motorcyclists from Italy who invited me to join them, so now I didn't have to worry about traveling alone. While waiting in line, I got stuck a few cars behind, and when I got to the other side, the group was nowhere to be found. Fortunately, I saw them at a gas station a few kilometers down the road, and boy was I glad. I waited for them to fill up, and then we started back up again all together, which made me feel more safe. The first riders took the lead a little bit ahead of the group. I joined the middle. When we entered villages, we slowed down because, as we were already aware, most had police checkpoints. After half an hour, we had to go through one, but there were too many of us for them to check, so the police just played a little joke on us and let us continue on our way. This part of Albania was very green, and the road was nice, with one lane in each direction. However, the group was pretty fast, and I couldn't keep up with them. So, when they made a stop for a coffee, I just continued on my own. My first stop was in Elbasan. I found a nice place in the city center to have a coffee and take a needed break. It was here where I made the mistake of giving money to a child beggar. Without realizing it, a bunch of kids suddenly appeared, begging for money and messing with my stuff, so I decided to leave. In order to get to Tirana from Elbasan, I had to ride 50 kilometers through the mountains of central Albania. When I started to descend the mountain, I stopped to take a few shots of Elbasan from the top. The route was beautiful and had an incredible panoramic view of a large area of the countryside. Dimitris from Ohrid had suggested it because, although it was more difficult, it's half the distance compared to the Tirana highway. I passed a tavern a few kilometers from the peak, and the smell that came from it was so good that I had to stop and eat there. Besides, it was already lunchtime, and I didn't know if I would find anything else down the road. As you can see, I had pork chops and a salad, and paid only €8. With a full stomach, I hit the road again to the capital of Albania. The route was indeed beautiful, but nonetheless, it had a lot of turns and road construction, so it was exhausting. I started to think how far away Kotor was. However, as I approached Tirana, the road got better. While I was entering the city, I suddenly saw a car driving on the wrong side of the highway coming right at me. I soon realized this is not an uncommon driving habit in Albania. You have to be very careful while driving or riding. I continued on my way, and then a while later, and without any warning, the road ended, and it was hard to tell where you were supposed to go. Something that impressed me is how houses here get their electricity. Notice the cables and the poles. The traffic has stopped here because this overloaded truck cut a few of the power lines coming from these houses. The driver just tossed them off and left. After a while, I asked a local guy how to get to the highway, and in fluent Greek he explained the route to me. Because I was in Albania, I got used to speaking in English. But when people saw my license plate and realized that I'm Greek, they would say to me, "Hey, you are Greek and you talk in English in Albania?" They all said that most Albanians have lived in Greece for many years, so they speak the language. My fears about this country soon disappeared. I don't know if I was just lucky, but all the people that I encountered were very kind and friendly. It wasn't that hard finding my way out of the city to head north. I stopped only once for gas and to ask for directions. From Tirana to the northern border, there were only a few good stretches of road. Most of it was pretty bad. You have to be very careful because people drive however they want here. They also stop wherever they want, whenever they want. What's worse is that many parts had a lot of traffic. Just before the border of Montenegro, at the Kotor junction, I stopped for another coffee and to take a little break. It was really beautiful in front of the river. I had just completed a difficult 250 kilometers, but I still had 110 kilometers to go until Kotor, and on a road that I was not familiar with. It was getting late, and I was so tired that it seemed impossible that I would make it so far north. I started thinking about Dimitris from Ohrid, and how he tried warning me of the difficulty of completing the trip in one go. So I decided I would ride as far as I could reasonably go. At first, the road was a bit of a disappointment and was so bad that I thought I was lost. So I stopped at a village to ask for directions. After a while, things got worse. I had to drive for about an hour on a dirt road that was under construction. which made traction a bit of an issue, especially considering how my bike was fully loaded with all my stuff. I hadn't even reached the Adriatic coast when my back started to hurt. The pain was becoming unbearable as I reached the coast a few kilometers before the city of Bar. I didn't want to stay in a city, so I checked my map and saw that the closest option was a village called Petrovac, a small, picturesque tourist destination. I was exhausted when I finally got there. Luckily, I found a nice, clean seaside studio apartment for only 30 euros for the night. Petrovac has a population of about 1,500, and since World War I, it has been a popular tourist destination for Balkans and Italians. During my stay there, the whole village was preparing for the summer season in order to welcome the soon-to-be arriving vacationers. In the north part of the beach, inside the stone castle, I found an Italian restaurant where I had a delicious carbonara. The next morning, I set off for Kotor and planned on staying overnight in Dubrovnik. The landscape along the Adriatic Sea was very beautiful. After the chaotic moments I had experienced in Albania, I was finally back in a European environment. Montenegro actually uses the euro, something that I wasn't aware of until then. At one point, I saw a little fairy tale-like castle out in the water on a little picturesque island. I eventually learned that this island, called Sveti Stefan, was bought by a well-known Greek businessman and is actually a resort. I didn't want to get off schedule, so I decided not to visit it. It was only the third day, and I still had a long road ahead of me. So I passed through Budva without stopping, and 20 kilometers later, I reached the impressive Vimak tunnel that leads to Kotor. Kotor is located in the northeast coast of Montenegro. It's a historical city that has been declared a World Heritage Site of UNESCO. The old town is located just in front of the port and is surrounded by a wall that was built during Venetian occupation. The approximately 4 centuries of Venetian rule is clearly reflected in the architecture. The landscape is very unique. Taking a walk up to the castle to see the panoramic view of the mountainous bay is definitely worth it. Each day, thousands of people visit the picturesque cobblestone paths throughout the town. The traditional shops and cafes are always full, making Kotor the most touristic city in the country. If you enjoy sightseeing and have more time than I did, then you should definitely visit the Marine Museum, where works of art, costumes, weapons, pictures, and model ships are on display. It is certainly worth visiting this kind of city, as everywhere you turn you are surrounded by beautiful scenery which almost takes you to another era. It's noon, and I'm beginning my ascent to Dubrovnik. I still have 100 kilometers to go. There's a bit of traffic, and because of the incline up the mountain, I'm a little bit tired. The road has 1 lane per direction, and at some points there are many curves and turns, which force me to ride slowly behind trucks. The landscape of the bay is gorgeous. It's actually one of the most beautiful things I saw on this trip. Now I'm approaching Dubrovnik, and I can see its gorgeous castle to my left. It's really an impressive sight, and earns its nickname as the Diamond of the Adriatic. Dubrovnik has a population of 44,000, and lies in the Dalmatia region of Croatia. For many centuries, Venetians ruled it, and was their biggest port on the Adriatic Sea. Today, it's a popular resort town, one of the biggest in the Mediterranean Sea. In 1979, it was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The wall that surrounds the old town is 4 to 6 meters in thickness and stretches 2 kilometers. Behind the wall is a unique beauty. You can walk through the cobblestone paths and enjoy the interesting architecture of the area, as well as the impressive churches. If you have time, visit the War Photo Limited Museum, where you can witness the horror of the war through image. Furthermore, you can take the cable car just outside of the south part of the old town and take panoramic shots at the top of the hill. The city is full of gorgeous spots to enjoy. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to really enjoy the beauty of it all. When the cruise ships leave at night, Dubrovnik calms down and resumes its normal pace. I think it's the best time to soak in its history. Unfortunately, I had trouble finding a place to stay in Dubrovnik. Furthermore, being such a touristic city, most hotels were full or expensive. I really like being spontaneous on my bike trips, so I'm not used to pre-booking rooms, but for this city it was a mistake not doing so. It's best you book a room before your visit, because I had to ride through the city for more than an hour and a half before finding a place. I'm now in South Croatia. I have completed over 1,200 kilometers. So far I have seen beautiful landscapes and cities that look like they were from a fairy tale. However, I'm still excited for my next few days in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and not only because its gorgeous nature, but also the recent happenings during the Yugoslavian War, which stir many strong emotions in me.